Today, I'm going to talk about the parentified daughter. I recently did an Instagram post on this and it went viral because so many people resonated with it. And I think a lot of you listening are also going to be able to relate. So let's get into it now. In a healthy parent-child relationship, the parent is able to meet the physical and the emotional needs of the child. Over time, this gives the child the ability to ultimately learn how to meet their needs on their own so that they can develop what's called a sense of self, or simply an idea of who they are in the world and how they have to show up. And then they can become emotionally mature. The reality is, many parents actually lack the inner resources and abilities to meet the needs of their children. So instead, they end up looking to their children to meet their own needs. And this creates a situation where a lot of us have had to become a parent to our own parent, often taking on responsibilities that we're not really ready or mature enough to even take on. The parentified daughter becomes an adult who ultimately believes that it's her role to fix everyone and to manage everything around her. So first, here are some signs that you might have been parentified. First sign, you've had to take care of your siblings and a lot of the times, the duties of the home on a regular basis. This means caring for your siblings, maybe doing the wash, making dinner. Again, taking care of responsibilities that aren't your responsibility to take care of. Another sign is you might have had to act as a therapist to your parent or maybe both of your parents, listening to their issues like marriage problems, financial problems, ultimately hearing things that are emotionally beyond your ability to understand and support. Another sign, your parent might have looked to you from a young age to give them advice, to give them solutions, to help them solve their own problems. Another sign that you're parentified is you might have had to mediate issues, maybe between your parents, maybe between your parents and each other, maybe between your parents and siblings, maybe between siblings. Either way, you found yourself in the middle of conflict and having to help others resolve it. Another sign that you might have been parentified is a lot of the times you were left alone in your room, and maybe you weren't really checked on. No one asked how you were doing, how you were feeling, if you needed anything. Another sign that you might have been parentified is that your parents just generally didn't have any interest in who you were, weren't really curious, didn't really ask, didn't try to get to know about you. A lot of times this results in we end up watching TV shows, maybe movies, and sometimes we fantasize about being in a different family, being with family members who are interested and who care in that way. Last two signs. You might have had to feel like simply you had to grow up too fast. You had to mature too quickly. Maybe you were even told, you're wise beyond your years. You're so mature for your age. And final sign that you might have been parentified in childhood is when you look back, you can't really recall being joyful, being happy, or being carefree at all. Again, because of the amount of responsibility that you've had to take on, those emotions just simply weren't present. Now, let's talk a little bit about how being parentified in childhood might impact you now into adulthood. The first impact that you might notice is you might believe now that it is your role to fix everything, to fix everyone around you, just like you did in childhood. Another sign that you might notice is you might just generally feel depressed, burnt out, maybe just overall exhausted. But you end up hiding those feelings because over time you've learned that your feelings and your needs just simply don't matter. Another sign that you might notice in your adulthood now is you might notice a lot of guilt that you feel. Typically, maybe if you had siblings, around how your siblings were raised, the emotional or physical neglect that they experience. Some of the times we might feel badly about having experienced that ourselves, but most of the time we're feeling guilty about what happened to them or those around us, not really focused on ourselves at all. Another sign that you might notice in your adulthood is you might struggle to know how you feel, never know what's going on with you emotionally, even when asked. And this is because no one really attuned to you or mirrored your emotions back, helping you understand how it is that you feel. So you end up being an adult who's mostly confused or generally unsure about how you feel most of the time. Another sign that you might notice in your adulthood is you might find yourself being susceptible to love bombing. And what love bombing is, really simply, it's someone who shows you a lot of attention, a lot of affection. And we become susceptible to that because deep down, we are desperate to find someone who actually does see us. So when someone seems like they see us, we love it, we eat it up. Final two impacts. You might notice that generally you feel angry, but you might not feel angry at the world around you. A lot of times we end up coping with this anger or the rage that we might even feel by turning it inward, by punishing ourselves, by restricting maybe ourselves, or by being super hard on ourselves for any mistake that we make at all. We're turning the anger that we're feeling very naturally from not having our needs met, not having anyone care for us, and we're turning that on us. The final impact that you might notice is you might just struggle to focus. In order to cope with everything that you've had to deal with since childhood, you probably, to cope with all of those overwhelming feelings and lack of support, started to dissociate or to disconnect. This is a common coping mechanism where we just zone out for periods of time. And this results in us struggling to concentrate on what maybe we want to be concentrating on. And then ultimately, we end up struggling to remember what we did, what we didn't do. Now, as I imagine, a lot of you are sitting here listening, maybe for the first time coming to realize that you were parentified in childhood. I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. And if you're not yet subscribed, you might want to do so now, because next week, I'm going to talk about how to begin to heal from this childhood of parentification.